We're at a pivotal moment in Scotland's history and at a crossroads in Scotland's future. The independence referendum could be a once-in-a-lifetime event. The Scottish Parliament was established with an electoral system which was never supposed to produce a majority government, and instead relying on coalitions. As the SNP were the only major party to support independence, the Greens, the Socialists and Solidarity have only ever had a handful of MSPs, and a coalition between pro-independence parties was always highly unlikely. With other parties, Labour, Tories, Lib Dems, they favour a unionist view and they would not enter into a coalition with a pro-independence party, as we saw in 2007. The SNP won a majority in the 2011 election, which was never designed to happen, so with a rare circumstance we were able to have a referendum in Scotland's constitutional status. It's a highly important event for both the yes and the no campaigns, as it demonstrates an opportunity to either achieve independence and become a fully sovereign state, or renew the 307-year-old union with the United Kingdom. This is massive, and I'm happy to accept that my view won't be shared by everyone. I'm also happy to debate or discuss with anyone who has any different views to me, because this is an incredibly important moment in our history, and whatever your views are, we're voting for the exact same objective. Every one of us wants a Scotland which is best placed to serve the people of the country. Me, you, our children, our parents, our friends and our colleagues. And I'm strongly of the view that the best future for us as Scots is an independent country with full powers to govern our own affairs. A lot of issues are being incorporated into the independence referendum, and they're important discussions. Issues such as Trident, democracy, child poverty, pensions, currency, living wage, they're all important issues and they're things that I'll chime in with my analysis. But essentially independence is not about these things, it's about having the power to mould these issues into what we as a country would like. And consequently, independence for me, it's not an end in itself, it's a means to an end. I strongly believe the best people to reflect Scotland's interests are people who live and work here. With some control over their own affairs in the Scottish Parliament, obviously, but this Westminster government continuing to enact policies which are not just the antithesis to the Scottish psyche, but are actively opposed in Scotland. I mean, things like the spare room subsidy, not to unionise, the bedroom tax, tuition fees, the workfare programme, and so on. These are things that the Tory party pursues in order to win Middle England voters, and consequently are things which Labour are reluctant to oppose as they're competing for the same group. Independence gives us a chance to be governed by a party that we choose. The decision of the referendum really comes down to the question of whether or not we want to be a sovereign state or a region of the UK. There's no doubt that we could sustain ourselves. I mean, Scotland's paid more tax per head than the rest of the UK for the past 30 years, which dispels the common misconception that Scotland is subsidised by the rest of the UK. And as the FT, the Financial Times, reported earlier this year, an independent Scotland could expect to start with a healthier state of finances than the rest of the UK. A healthier state of finances. So there's no doubt that everything that we have at the moment could be paid for through general taxation at its current levels. To switch gears a wee bit, a lot of people who are watching this will probably come from the same geographic area as me, so really we can't really talk about independence without discussing the obvious elephant in the room, and that's Trident. I mean, whether or not nuclear deterrence works is a debate for another time, because it could take up an entire video by itself. But some anecdotes I would quickly highlight is that South Africa is no more threatened by foreign invasion after decommissioning their nuclear weapons. And not even just that, our primary security threats come from non-conventional sources. And the main obvious ones being terror groups as opposed to countries. The nuclear deterrence can't address these. The renewal of Trident is illegal under the Non-Proliferation Treaty anyway. The renewal of Trident is set to cost the British taxpayer £100 billion over the next 25 years. That's 100,000 million. And it's an astonishingly high price for a piece of scrap metal. I mean, imagine the number of schools, hospitals, community centres we could build, how many teachers, doctors, nurses, social workers we could employ with that money. I mean, money of that magnitude should be invested in people, not in weapons that you can't use, because if you use them, somebody else is going to use them, and it's going to render the world uninhabitable. So that brings me to the primary concern for most people in this area, and understandably, I mean, it's perceived as being pretty important for the local economy. And I understand that anxiety from a general point of view. I mean, everybody's got mortgages to pay, kids to feed, homes to heat. And specifically understand the anxiety because Jackie Bailey, who, if you're not from this area, is the MSP for Dumbarton, which encapsulates a large part of Western Bartonshire and Argyll and Bute, she constantly tells us that 11,000 jobs at Fastlane would be at risk. I don't want to be too strong, but that is a lie. And it's a lie because I've told her in person that it's simply not true. And when I first drew her attention to it in the Scottish election in 2011, she brushed it off and she continues to deliberately mislead people for ideological gain. She was on Scotland Tonight not too long ago, maybe about a month and a half ago, and she just continued to repeat that between 6,000 and 11,000 figure, and it's just simply not true. Now, I know it's not true because the Ministry of Defence replied to a Freedom of Information request, which asserted that, and just going to quote here, there are 520 civilian jobs at HM Naval Base in Clyde, including Coolport and Fastlane, that directly rely upon the Trident programme. So, 520 jobs, that's what the MOD are saying. I think I'd rather trust them than a politician on that. Now, I totally understand that that's little comfort to the 520 people that would affect, okay? But we can do things to protect those 520 members of staff. Now, if I had a seat at the table, I'd advocate setting aside some of that £100,000 million to compensate the workers. Probably pay a lot of servants for the next 25 years, at which point Trident would have needed renewed again anyway. I'm a wee bit of a softie like that, I think that they've done a great job in obviously looking after Britain's nuclear deterrent. It's a very important job while we have it, so I think it's only right that those workers are properly compensated for the hard work that they've put in. That's just me and I'm not elected, so what are the others saying? Well, the SNP, who obviously make up the Scottish Government, have committed to keeping Fastlane open as a conventional naval base, which would be the flagship base for the Scottish Defence Force. Now, that would obviously preserve the 520 jobs in the medium to long term. If you ask me, a headquarters for the Scottish Defence Force is going to be a considerable base. Another point, I went to see Jim Sullivan speak last week and he was very good, former Labour and SNP MP. And what he asserted was that BP have carried out a geological study of the Firth of Clyde. In the 1980s discovered that there would be a high probability of oil, when he discovered a letter which referenced another letter sent by a guy called Roger Mansell, who I'd never heard of, and Jim Sullivan admitted he hadn't heard of him either. But it was an MOD official, and he explicitly forbade. Anyway, he wrote a letter to the Department of Energy, who were wanting to explore the opportunity of extracting oil in that area, and he said that it just simply couldn't happen because it would interfere with the operations of Britain's nuclear deterrent, Trident. So that point's particularly striking for two reasons, because firstly it means that if the oil was discovered instead of the West of Scotland costing the country £100 billion, it would still create hundreds of billions of pounds if oil was discovered. Now, it brings me on to my second point. Even if oil wasn't discovered, the exploration work would provide a high number of highly skilled marine jobs. I wonder where they could get that talent from. So you've got North Sea oil, you've got oil in the Clyde, you've got the unsubstantiated reports, albeit of oil near the Shetland Islands, which has been causing a buzz on social media. You might have heard David Cameron's been up at Shetland, he's been photographed meeting with oil barons and whatnot. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen, but if it is, it only adds to the pot of black gold that we've got sitting up there. But it's not just about oil. I mean, we've got Scotch whisky, we've got insurance and financial services, we've got the mechanical engineering industry. It's difficult to see how the rest of the UK would reject a currency union, because added transaction taxes would make no sense and cost a lot of money for both sides. It simply doesn't make sense. But in any case, as we saw for the first debate on STV, and by the way, I'm not a massive fan of the debates because it sort of caricatures it as Darwin versus Salmond, and it's certainly not that. And I've never voted for a political party based on the constitutional status. It's just not something that I've ever done. Put my hands up and say that I do tend to vote for those parties. Solidarity and the Scottish Socialists being the name-worthy ones. But it's not about Alex Salmond, it's not about Arthur Darn, it's about me and you. It's about us taking control. It's about the future of the country, and I'm sorry, but the emphasis on party politics from Better Together is just unwarranted, and it's just a form of negative campaigning because they know that Alex Salmond is not overwhelmingly popular, and that's the only reason that they're playing in that. But anyway, in the first debate, Alex Salmond was reluctant to say it. He kind of came out of his shell a wee bit in the second debate, but in any case, I'll say it for him. If we didn't enter a currency union with the rest of the UK, we'd continue to use the pound without a currency union. The reason for that is, well, the reason that, first of all, that he's not admitting it is because it's a classical political dodge. I mean, we don't want to say it because if we get independence, when the Scottish Parliament, or the committee that's set up on its behalf, when they travel to London to secure Scotland's future with the succession negotiations, then they've already shown their hands, you know. And I think Salmond actually said this in the second debate. He says, look, if I go down to London and if I set my stall out for second best, then second best is what Scotland's going to get. And I mean, that's only right enough. Anyone who negotiates in a professional capacity or a voluntary capacity, I mean, they'd be able to tell you that right off the bat. But another thing that I would personally favour over a currency union would be establishing our own Scottish pound and pegging it to the sterling. So, I mean, if you're not too familiar with that, basically what happens is if the pound goes up in the financial markets, the Scottish pound would follow it. If it drops, the Scottish pound would follow it. And the advantage that has is, okay, there's maybe a wee bit of cost from the outset, but we can actually set up our own central bank and not rely on the Bank of England. I don't think relying on the Bank of England is inherently bad. I don't think there's a massive problem with it. But I would like to have the control of things like interest rates and things of that nature under our control. But I mean, the currency union is perfectly plausible, and it would suit an independent Scotland, and incidentally it would suit the rest of the United Kingdom, regardless of what Alistair Darling or anyone else says on the other side, or even if you're undecided and you think that, it's just simply not true. I mean, if you're voting on September 18th, in all health to you, honestly, I only want the best outcome for my fellow countrymen and countrywomen. So if you're voting no and you're well principled and you've got the best intentions, then brilliant, fantastic, and I hope you get what you want out of this whole debate. But what I would say is, don't expect everything to carry on as normal. We've taken a different path to Westminster in things like free tuition for university students, free prescriptions, and so on. So do you really think that if we go to the British government saying, well, we're getting free tuition for our students, free prescriptions for our people, do you really think the British government will continue to fund that? The Scottish Parliament says, look, we need money to run our own affairs, which is always less than what we get in return, what we would get if we raised our own revenues anyway. Do you really think they're going to turn around and give us that money, especially when English people don't get free tuition? They pay £9,000 a year, £36,000 for a degree. They pay about £8 a head for prescriptions, I think, the last time I checked. Do you really think that they'll support the Scottish budget in that way? Nah, they'll continue to cut it. They've already been cutting it. John Swinney said that before the last budget they cut the Scottish Block Grant, which is the Scottish Parliament's funding, by about 8%. I have to say they would probably cut it even more. If for no other reason other than the Barnett formula, which is the current mechanism for deciding how much Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland gets from the UK Treasury. It's based on public spending in England, so if public spending goes up in England, brilliant, public spending everywhere else goes up, so the Scottish Parliament gets more money. But if they cut public provisions in England, then that has a knock-on effect on us, and our money goes down as well. Now, I fully accept the fact that the NHS, for example, is under operational control in Scotland. That's totally fine. And I also take the point, something that I was quite surprised that Alistair Darling didn't make in the second debate, at least I don't think he did, is that public health spending in England has actually gone up. But let's not kid ourselves. I mean, with the vast privatisation and outsourcing that's going on south of the border, I mean, that will inevitably result in reduced public spending, and as a consequence that means it's less money that we'll get. And you know, I think Scottish people they're broadly in favour of public service and not you know, putting vital public services out for private profit, because it doesn't work. Effectively what happens is you've got companies cutting corners in the pursuit of profit, and that's what we've seen with the gas and the electricity and the railways and you know, things like that. They're run at a higher expense. Okay, it's not coming out of wage, but we need to pay over the odds for these services when we do need them, and they're not run as well. They're just simply not run as well. One point I really want to hammer home is so many countries in the world have had to pick up arms and fight for their right to self-determination across the globe. Since all the empires were collapsing, they've had to pick up arms and really, really physically fight for their independence. All we have to do is, well, first of all, make sure we're registered to vote by the 2nd of September. I think you can do that through the Electoral Commission's website, and by the way, regardless of which side you're going to vote, or if you're still undecided, I think it is really important that you take part in the process. But once you're registered, all you need to do for us to get independence, go to a polling station, 18th of September, cross the box next to yes, hunky dory. That's all you have to do. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to take full control of our affairs, take a different road and secure our own destiny. You can't put a price on that. Let's grasp it and build a Scotland that we can be even more proud of. And I'll just end with a quote from Jim Sillars, who I was talking about a wee bit earlier on. And the Martin a few weeks ago, he said, it was something to the effect of, on the 18th of September 2014, between the hours of 7 AM and 10 PM, absolute sovereign power will lie in the hands of the Scottish people. They have to decide whether to keep it or give it away to whether minority status makes them permanently powerless and vulnerable. I would urge everyone to vote yes on the 18th of September.